Hello everyone, Louisa Jewell here. How are you? I hope you are doing well, staying safe and healthy. Now, I run a water cooler talk. I do that every Monday and Thursday afternoon from 2 p.m. to 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. And what it is it's just a half an hour where people learn a well-being tip and then they have an opportunity to talk about it and incorporate it and discuss it. And then we move on. So it's half an hour of support. And a lot of people have found it very helpful to get this kind of support through this pandemic. Now, one of the things that came up is the idea of feeling guilty. So a lot of people are finding that they're sitting at home and it's a lot easier to ruminate because there's less people to talk to, less people to be distracted by. You're not in the office busy all the time, so you are alone with your thoughts. And a lot of the times we can turn to, oh, what do I feel guilty about? So I wanted to talk today about guilt and how you can manage it. So the first thing is guilt necessarily a bad thing? And guilt is really not a bad thing when you think about it, because it's a societal thing, really. It helps society in the sense that if I go and do something and I feel bad about it, well, and I feel guilty about it, then that's going to prevent me from doing that again. So actually it helps people stay in check and they don't engage in bad behavior because then they feel guilty about it afterwards. So guilt is good when it stops you from doing things that could hurt other people. Guilt is not necessarily good when it makes you feel like you are a bad person. So when you internalize it, when you embody it, just remember you are not your actions. So just because you've done something that is not necessarily a good thing doesn't necessarily mean that overall you are suddenly a bad person because you've done that one thing. So we always talk about an Aristotelian mean with regards to this. So a little bit of guilt can be good if it keeps your behavior in check. But if it makes you feel bad about yourself, then guilt is not necessarily good. Now, let's talk about how you can manage guilt. So, one of the first things you can do is stop catastrophizing it. So, a lot of the times I find that people feel guilty about things and they punish themselves, and the punishment really doesn't suit the crime. So I have a friend of mine who, she cheated on her husband. Not her proudest thing that she's done in her life. She always felt that it was a mistake. It actually broke up their marriage. Now, after that, for 7 years, her ex-husband called her names, was very verbally abusive to her, made her life very, very difficult. And she just kind of took it because she felt guilty. She felt that she deserved it. And when I spoke to her 7 years later, because I hadn't seen this friend in a really long time, I said, enough is enough. Yes, you've done this thing that you feel bad about. It broke your marriage. However, it's time to forgive yourself, and it's time to say, I will not accept this bad behavior anymore. I made a mistake. I'm human. I've apologized. I've done what I've done. And, we need to move on. And I do not deserve to be abused for the rest of my life because I made this mistake. So ask yourself, is your punishment, is it greater than the crime? All right. So think about that. Another thing you can do is practice what we call non-contingent self-esteem. So when you do something perhaps that you feel bad about, think about how you can fix that. Focus. So for example, you've done something that's hurt one of your friend's feelings. Focus on apologizing. Focus on getting into action. Don't spend all your time ruminating about what a bad person you are because you did that one thing. Focus more on fixing it in actions than beating yourself up. Because when we talk about contingent self-esteem, is what we're saying is you decide to judge yourself based on something that you've done. And you don't want to do that. You want to be able to see something you've done and fix it rather than trying to say, oh, now I must be all of this. All right. Here's the third tip that I want to talk about in terms of how to manage your guilt. Don't allow people to make you feel guilty because you haven't jumped through a whole bunch of hoops to act in ways that are appropriate to them. A lot of the times, there's a lot of people out there who have rules or standards that you don't meet. And if you don't meet them and they feel bad because of that, sometimes they're going to project that on you and make you feel guilty. They don't know you. Don't allow people to make you feel guilty. And I'm going to tell you a great story. Now, when my kids were young, I had friends who were police officers, and they said to me, Louisa, do not leave your children with older relatives, especially of the opposite sex, because that's how sexual abuse takes place. That a lot of the times it's a family member. So I always said to my children, even if it's an adult, if you don't feel comfortable hugging or giving somebody a kiss, you don't have to. That's one of the things you can do, is teach your kids not to feel guilty about doing things that, by saying no to things that make them feel uncomfortable. So I always said, if something makes you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to do it, no matter what it is, no matter who it is, if they're an adult or if they're a family member. So we had a family member. I'm going to call them Uncle Bob. We don't have an Uncle Bob, so I'm just made that up. But there was a great example where my eldest daughter, Uncle Bob, came to the door and said, oh, her name is Christina. Oh, Christina, come and give me a kiss. Come and give me a kiss. I love you and I need a kiss. And she said, Uncle Bob, I don't want to kiss you, but hello and welcome, because I always said to my kids, you have to be welcoming of people and say hello and be polite. And this person, Uncle Bob, started to cry, saying, oh, Christina doesn't love me. She doesn't want to give me a kiss. And this is what she did. She leaned over. She was so empathetic to Uncle Bob. And she said, oh, Uncle Bob, of course I love you. I just don't want to kiss you. And then she walked away. And I thought, wow, I mean, I know 40-year-old women who couldn't do that. I know I couldn't have done that when I was so young. I think she was 7 years old. And it's so powerful that she was able to say, I will not allow you to make me feel guilty because I feel uncomfortable for something that you want to do. And I am not going to mold to your standard because I'm being inappropriate or I'm not following your rules and it makes you feel sad or mad or whatever it does. So empower yourself. Know that sometimes you have to stand up for your own values and what is important to you. And don't allow someone else to manipulate you into having to do something because, especially something that you really don't feel comfortable doing. Stand up for yourself and don't feel guilty about it. Now, another thing is that don't give the action more meaning than it deserves. So, for example, I had a friend of mine who, we're doing this exercise program, and she said, I didn't put myself first today, and I didn't do the exercise. And then the next day, she missed the exercise again. We're supposed to do it every day. And she said, oh, I didn't put myself first today. That's putting a lot of meaning. She's feeling guilty because she didn't just miss the exercise, but she's not putting herself first. So she's giving this act of not doing the exercise much greater meaning than really is required. So I talked to her and said, leave that alone. You just weren't able to exercise that day. You'll do it tomorrow. It doesn't mean you're not putting yourself first. So let's not give these things greater meaning than what they are, because then it could just escalate the guilt that we feel. Here's another one. I must be hard on myself if I want to get ahead or if I want to be a better person. So often we feel guilty for doing things because we feel that the only way we can be, better is by being hard on ourselves. And that's not really the case. And what we find with the self-compassion research is that, in fact, people do better, they're more productive, they perform better when they are more self-compassionate. So don't be so hard hard on yourself. Be self-compassionate, and you will actually do better and get ahead. And the final thing that I want to say about managing your guilt is, and this is a famous Maya Angelou saying, when you know better, you will do better. So if you've done something that you're not proud of, you can say, you know what, I didn't know any better back then, but I know better now, and I will do better. Starting today, I will do better. I didn't know better before. I will do better now. And if we can always be learning from our mistakes, that is what is the important thing, that as opposed to always punishing ourselves for our mistakes, learn from your mistakes. And that's how you're going to take yourself to higher levels of well-being and happiness, is when you can be self-compassionate, not beat yourself up, and be able to say, I will do better now that I know better. So I hope these tips on dealing and managing guilt have been helpful for you. I know over the years, getting rid of these feelings of guilt has been tremendously helpful for me. So I hope they're helpful for you. All right, everybody, stay safe. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.